words, evil doesn't exist on its own. It only exists as a lack in a good thing. So it's not a thing. Now somebody go, what about Isaiah 45:7? We'll talk about that during the Q&A if you want. But the point here is that evil doesn't exist unless good exists. Now, this leaves us with a conclusion here. Does evil disprove God? Actually, the answer is no. Why? Because evil is actually an argument for God. Because objective evil presupposes objective good, and objective good requires God. You see, there'd be no such thing as evil unless there was good, and there'd be no such thing as good unless God existed. So when you're arguing to say that there is no God by saying there's too much evil in the world, you're actually stealing from God to argue against Him. That's the premise of the book. The book Stealing from God is not about tithing. Not that there's anything wrong with tithing, but that's not the point. The subtitle is Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case. And if atheists like Richard Dawkins are going to say there's evil out there, then they have to presuppose a standard of good, but that standard of good only exists if God exists. Why? Because by definition, what we mean by God is the standard called goodness. Now, C.S. Lewis realized this. As you know, C.S. Lewis was an atheist early on in his life, and he thought there couldn't be a good God because there's too much injustice in the world. And then one day he had an epiphany, and he ultimately wrote this down in the book Mere Christianity. Here's what he said. He said that evil requires good and good requires God. Here's how he put it. He said, as an atheist, my argument against God was that the universe seems so cruel and unjust, but how had I got this idea of just and unjust? A man does not call a line crooked unless he has some idea of a straight line. What was I comparing this universe with when I called it unjust? You see, something can't be unjust unless something is... Something can't be not right unless something is...
Right.
Something can't be immoral unless something is... In fact, if you ask somebody, if somebody says there's too much evil in the world, one thing you can ask them is, what do you mean by evil? Now, what people will normally do is give you examples of evil. Oh, murder is evil, rape is evil. No, I'm not talking about examples. I'm talking about a definition. How do you define evil? And you'll realize it's very difficult to define evil without reference to good. And as soon as you reference good, what you're doing is you're giving an argument for what we mean by good, and that is God's nature. In fact, you can put it this way. The shadows prove the sunshine. In order to have shadows, you have to have sunshine. In other words, in order to have evil, you have to have good. Oh, you can have sunshine without shadows. You can have good without evil, but you can't have shadows without sunshine. You can't have evil without good. So evil doesn't disprove God. Evil may prove there's a devil out there, but evil doesn't disprove God because there'd be no such thing as evil unless there was good, and there'd be no such thing as good unless God existed. In fact, let's go back to Dawkins' quote. Notice right in the middle of this quote, you find the word unjust. Where is Dawkins getting this word or this concept of unjust from? Where's he getting it from? He's stealing it from God. Because there's no such thing as unjust unless there's just. And there's no such thing as just unless God existed. Now, ironically, in another book, Dawkins actually says this. He talks about if atheistic materialism is true, and that's what he is, he's an atheistic materialist, he says there is no evil or there is no good. Here's what he said. He said, in a universe of blind physical forces and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt and other people are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reason to it, nor any justice. There is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. Now, I love Dawkins because he's a great writer. What he says there is exactly right if his worldview is true. But if there is no good or evil, why is he complaining about the God of the Bible? There's nothing wrong with the God of the Bible. Because there's nothing good or evil, so you can't complain about the God of the Bible. In order to complain about the God of the Bible, you actually have to steal a standard of goodness from God in order to say he's immoral. Now, we deal with the whole Canaanite issue and all this stuff about what Dawkins says in here in the book, Stealing from God. I don't have time to get into it, but you can pick that up if you want. By the way, all the proceeds of the sale of the books and the DVD set that's back there will go to feed needy children. Mine. So, you know, I got 3 sons, so I need some help. Actually, they're all grown now. I was in the Navy for 8 years, which, by the way, stands for Never Again Volunteer Yourself. And after my kids grew up and they went through high school, they went to college, and they said, "Dad, we're thinking about going in the military. What should we do?" I said, "Well, look, if you want to fight, go Navy. Because wherever there's a problem, we just pull our aircraft carrier up and we take care of it. We don't have to ask for permission to use runways or any of that. We bring our own runway." I said, "Well, if you want a nice life, go Air Force." So they went Air Force. That's right. The oldest son is an intelligence officer in Augusta, Georgia. He's reading your email or somebody else's email. The Russians did it! The second son is a KC-10 pilot in California. He is a refueler. KC-10 refuels other planes. So what we say about Spencer is that every day he flies up to 30,000 feet, he sits around, and he passes gas. And he gets paid for it. Every man's dream. If I got paid for passing gas, I'd be a multi-millionaire already. The third son is not in the military, but he's out of the house. He's an engineer. In fact, he just moved from Birmingham back to Charlotte. We live in Charlotte now. He's got a new job in Charlotte. But my wife and I, for the past 2 years, have been empty nesters. Took us a while to get used to that. About 10 minutes. That's how long it took to change the locks. Do we have any empty nesters in here? Yeah, you notice how clean the house stays when they're gone? We love our kids, but they're really messes. You gotta clean the house once every 2 weeks if they're not there. If they're there, once every 2 hours. Anyway, how do we get off on that? Oh, the book. Yeah, the book. Christopher Hitchens. You may remember Christopher Hitchens, a brilliant British atheist. And since he had a British accent, he sounded even more brilliant than he was. Well, I had the opportunity to debate Christopher a couple of times. Both debates you can see for free on our website, crossexamine.org. And Christopher, of course, wrote the book, God Is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. And by the way, when you read this book, you realize much of what Hitchens says is true. Because what he's going through there is he's talking about all the evil religious people have done over the centuries. He's right about that. But his brother, Peter Hitchens, who is a Christian, used to be an atheist with Christopher but came back to the faith, said, actually, the book ought not be called God Is Not Great. It ought to be called Man Is Not Great. Because when you read the book, you realize he's talking about all the evil men have done, people have done. And by the way, this word poisons here. That's a very nice word, a very great way of saying that religion is evil. Right? Here's the problem. In Christopher's worldview, he has no resources to figure out what is evil because he's got no standard of good other than his own opinion. So what does he do? He steals it from God to argue against him. And by the way, religion doesn't poison everything. Everything poisons religion.
That's true.
You see, I poison religion. I can't live up to the pure words of Christ. In fact, I said in the second debate with him, I said, Christopher, look, I'm a hypocrite. I can't live up to what Christ told me to do. But if I could, I wouldn't need a Savior. If I was perfect, I wouldn't need a Savior. So when you say religious people have done evil things, and in fact all people have done evil things, you're kind of proving our worldview, that we are evil and we need a Savior. And so I said, look, when people tell me I can't go to church because there's too many hypocrites down there, I always say, come on down, pal, we got room for one more. You see, we're all hypocrites. That's why we need one another. That's why we need a Savior. If we were perfect, we wouldn't need it. So Christopher doesn't prove his point. He does prove that religious people have done evil things, don't get me wrong. But his whole thesis, there is no God, as a result of that, doesn't work. I do evil things, but my dad still exists. Right? Now, the guy who does point out that religion isn't as evil as you think it is this man, David Berlinski. You guys ever hear of this guy, David Berlinski? He's an agnostic. He's not a believer. But he is a very eloquent writer, very witty writer. He wrote the book, The Devil's Delusion, which is really a response to Dawkins. And you always hear, well, you know, religion is the source of all these wars and all this. Actually, you know what the truth of the matter is? According to the Encyclopedia of War, what percentage of wars do you think are directly caused by religion, religious skirmishes? How many? What is it? Huh?
15%.
Nice try, half of that. 7% of wars have something to do directly with religion. If Islam is taken out of that, jihad, it's down to 3%. I mean, let's just think about the last century. World War I, caused by religion? No. World War II, caused by religion? No. Korean War, caused by religion? No. Vietnam War, caused by religion? No. Iraq War, caused by religion? You say, oh, maybe? No.
No.
Saddam was an atheist. He claimed to be a Muslim, but he really was an atheist. And you could say, well, there may be religious factions to it. There are now. Once we got out of Iraq, what happened? Now you've got the Shia and the Sunni and the Kurds. They're all at each other's throats. In fact, if you think about this, most wars have little, if anything, to do with religion. And Berlinski puts this so well. Check out what he says in the book. He says, just who has imposed on the suffering human race poison gas, barbed wire, high explosives, experiments in eugenics, the formula for Zyklon B, which is what they use in the gas chambers, heavy artillery, pseudoscientific justifications for mass murder, cluster bombs, attack submarines, napalm, intercontinental ballistic missiles, military space platforms, and nuclear weapons? If memory serves, it was not the Vatican. Don't buy into the idea that religion is evil. I mean, sure, there are religions out there that may teach things that are evil, but there would be no such thing as evil unless there was good, and there would be no such thing as good unless a being we call God exists. So, where does the moral compass point? Is it to us? Do we get to make up right and wrong? No, we don't determine right and wrong. We discover right and wrong. In fact, if we take another look at our chart here, I actually think evil shouldn't be on the right side. Evil should be on the left side. Because evil actually presupposes good, and good presupposes God. So, the answer to the question, does evil disprove God, is no. Evil does not disprove God for the very reason we just spoke of. It actually shows there's a God. Again, it may prove there's a devil, a malevolent force, but it doesn't mean that God doesn't exist, because there'd be no such thing as evil unless there was good. There'd be no such thing as good unless God existed. Have I beaten that to death yet? You got it? All right, can you still hear me in the back? Let's try some more amplification. 1, 2.